Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Hump Day Hangar presentation brought to you by supercub.org. If this is your first time to watch one of these programs, a special welcome. There are 50 other great programs in our archives, and you can get those at supercub.org/HDHP. You can also just go to Google and type supercub.org /HDHP, and it'll find it for you. So you always hear folks asking you to like and subscribe, and the reason they do it is it does help. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribing to our channel gets you alerted of other riveting content which we may come up with. It's been a while since we did our last Hump Day program. We're now on a schedule of doing it when it makes sense. We're always looking for presenters, so let us know if you have someone we should be featuring on here. Talk to them, and when it makes sense, we'll do another one. So during the presentation, feel free to use the chat function on Zoom or YouTube to ask any questions that you have. We may hold them till the end, but feel free to ask as we go along so you don't forget. And tonight's presenter is Mark Scott. And Mark is an aeronautical engineer with degrees from Worcester Polytechnic Institute, the University of Maryland, and MIT. He retired from Sikorsky in 2020 and now works as a contract engineer for the Army. His certifications and flight experience include private pilot license, single engine land and sea. Additional training includes complex aircraft, high performance aircraft, spin, tailwheel, and aerobatics. I know he's working on his commercial now, and he likely has an instrument rating as well. And he has 20 hours of helicopter flight time. He completed construction of his Bearhawk in 2014 and is half owner of an RV-7A. Mark flew his Bearhawk to Alaska in 2015 and on the Big Tires and Campfires trip in 2017. As you'll see, he flew it to Montana and Idaho last year. Mark is the current president of EAA Chapter 27 in Meriden, Connecticut. Mark initiated the Teens to Flight program where high school kids built an RV-12 under the mentorship of chapter members. Welcome, Mark Scott.
Great, thanks, Steve. Glad to be here. So I'm going to get my screen share set up here and we'll get going. I have lots of pretty pictures of a trip and I'll tell you about it, some stories, and hopefully you'll learn something about it, about how to do this sort of thing. So let me just get set up here. Okay, I go to presentation mode and I swap. Okay, do people just see a clean
It looks beautiful.
Title slide? Yeah, that's one of my favorite pictures. Okay, great. Well, thanks for everybody for coming. Hopefully this will maybe inspire you to go out and take some trips. That's the way I kind of couched it when I gave it to my EAA chapter. Like I say, I'm a chapter president of 27 in Meriden, and we're doing well and flying lots of kids and so forth. So I want to talk about a trip we took to Idaho and Montana last year, namely Johnson Creek, Ryan Field, and Missouri Breaks. This was June of last year. So what's the kind of the theme tonight is I fly in Connecticut and it's pretty low altitude and flat and cosmopolitan, metropolitan, and going out west is a lot different. And so I've taken 2 trips out there now and I've learned quite a bit. So kind of what I want to do here is go through the trip, kind of how I went about it, how I learned about it, the information we gathered, talk about the actual operations at the strips. And the bottom line is that, learn what you can out there. There's lots of information, learn from other people, and go about it carefully. And you can go out there and really enjoy this stuff and do it safely. And so I got lots of pictures here and yeah, we'll get started. So I am going to start with a video. I'm hoping everybody here just likes to watch videos of airplanes. My son is a pretty good photographer, videographer, and he put this together. We're going to talk about some of the camera locations and things we had on the airplane. And so I'll just start off with this. It's about 2.5 minutes.
Mark, does this have any audio?
Say again, Steve.
Does this normally have any audio?
Yes, it has some sound with it. It has some music. I don't hear it.
It's okay. You just didn't share the audio when you clicked the screen share button. That's no big deal.
Okay. Well,
I'll sing along. So you might, since there's no audio, you might talk about that looks like Connecticut there, or maybe New Hampshire.
Yeah. Well, this is all flying out. Most of this is all flying out west with a little bit of flying over the Connecticut countryside.
That looks like Landmark.
It is. Yep. And this is the Missouri Breaks, the river up in Winifred. This is Upper Loon. I like the shadow in this one.
That's nice.
Yep. So this is Montana, Big Sky State.
That looks like Winifred.
Yep, that's it.
Folks, if you haven't been to Winifred, it's a real jewel.
Oops. So before, I don't know if I've got any more audio. Is there a quick way to share the audio, Steve?
What you do is that, yes, if you slide up to where your screen sharing options are at the top,
Yep.
You should see a little check thing that says share computer audio.
Under new share?
You can do it. You can actually just stop the share and reshare, and there's a little checkbox at the bottom that says share computer audio.
All right, so I'm going to stop share.
So when you hit screen share, down the bottom, there's two
share sound.
There you go.
Rats. Okay.
We were all humming songs.
Yeah, it's a decent.
That way we could have our own music. We didn't have to,
Yeah.
we weren't subjected to your music.
All right. Well, like I said, I'm not super savvy on this. Okay, so people should see a map. Or we back up with a map
Looks
and some
good.
pictures. Okay, great. So there's some pictures of the flying we did. Beautiful stuff, and with some practice and care, you can go out and do it yourself. So for those of you that are looking to do this sort of thing, hopefully you'll get enough information here to go give it a try. The good weather's coming. For those of you who have done it and been out there, please chime in with any other tips and tricks you may have for doing it. So I'm in the lower left here. I had the joy of going out with my son. Picture on the right is Ryan Field, just some of the pretty spectacular places you see. What you see here is a map that is generated by the Garmin PLB InReach. Garmin bought InReach a little while ago. I have one of their older models where it's great, and you can put on a ping system, or every 10 minutes it sends out a ping, goes to a website. Somebody can pull this up and they can see where you are. And at the end of your trip, you can come back and see where you've been. It's a wonderful way of tracking where you've been. One little interesting thing about it is, I learned this on my trip to Alaska, is that it only pings every 10 minutes. And if you land just after, if you land just before it pings and you turn it off, the last ping will be 10 minutes prior. And I did this once, and I called my wife and I said, I'm down. She goes, did you land in a swamp? And I said, no. She said, the last dot was in a swamp because the last ping didn't come out on the airport. So if you use one of these things, give it a little time on the ground so people aren't worried about you. So anyhow, so start way out here in Connecticut, a long 2.5-day trip. The overnight stops are in the circles. Went out to just north of Chicago, out to Wyoming, and then up to Ryan Field, which is over here. I'm assuming you can see the cursor. Can you see the cursor, Steve? Is there a cursor coming through? Yes, I see a nodding head. Okay. And then up here to Ryan Field, over here to Montana, and then we worked our way back. So the idea of the extent of the trip. So you got to just planning, right? Just regular cross-country trip planning. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then here's the more interesting stuff where we got through Wyoming, Nebraska, Teton Pass up here, then all the flying we did around Johnson Creek. So what we did is we kind of had 3 bases of location. That was the plan. Of course, weather, this is about a 2-week trip, and you've got to plan for weather. So the idea was to come to Johnson Creek, fly there as much as we could, weather permitting. And then if the weather looked good, we could come up here, and we actually picked Ryan Field, and we had about 3 days there. And then we worked our way over to Winifred. So if we had gotten stuck here with weather, and we had to wait a few days, we just wouldn't have gone up here to Ryan. We would have found our way and gone across. If the weather really went sour, we just would have come back. So one of the tricks to having a successful trip is be really flexible. And of course, we had camping gear and food, so we could land anywhere and put ourselves up if we had to, and have food. It's a wonderful flexibility. It takes a lot of pressure off trying to get someplace by a certain time. So anyhow, we hit 12 strips in Johnson Creek, 4 in the Ryan Field area, and 5 in the Winifred area. So I'll talk a little bit about the Bearhawk. So living kind of far away from places I want to travel to and wanting to carry stuff, and Bearhawk suits me pretty well. It's basically a Cessna 180 with a little more performance. 2,500 pounds gross, useful loads 950 to 1,000. I got 260 horsepower in it, so it goes well. I'm spoiled. 125 knot true at 10 gallons an hour. And that's a pretty good fuel flow because I have electronic ignition as well as a fuel injection. I run lean to peak, and the engine runs very clean. I really recommend you do that. I've got about almost 700 hours on it now. So one thing you'll notice is my son, the videographer, we have GoPro mounts all over the airplane. We've got on the wingtip, 2 mounts on the other side. We've got one on the tail, and we have a camera mount up in the ceiling of the cockpit. So he's had great fun being the photographer. So one recommendation, if you're going to take a trip and you have the back end open, get a cargo net. It makes life a lot easier, and you really got to make sure this stuff stays down. If you ever do end up on your back, the last thing you want is all this stuff crashing in on the front of the cockpit. It's pretty easy. This is just a cargo net from some auto supply place, and just hooked up some straps down to some hard points in the bottom. Just pack things neatly, cinch it down, you're all done. It'll keep it in there. So especially when we have 100 pounds of camera gear. So my son has a Pelican case. I think he had 2 of them, his expensive camera and stuff like that. So we weren't gross, but we had a lot of stuff. So anyhow, just a little bit going out, dodging clouds and showers the first day. You've probably done some of that. And sometimes you get a lucky photo. So we're working our way across the country, bouncing around clouds. But again, because we weren't rushed, we didn't have to be anywhere at a certain time. We could just go with the weather and, take what it gave us. And we visited a friend in Poplar Grove, former Sikorsky employee. He's building a Sonics. Poplar Grove, if you haven't been there, is maybe the largest flying community in the country. It's just spectacular. I think they've got 400 airplanes. 1,000 people live there, hangars everywhere. It's really something. And they have a huge EAA chapter. So when I showed this to our EAA chapter, I said, look at this, guys. It kind of makes us feel inferior. That's all one building for EAA. They have a 100 plus seating and a cafeteria. They have a full chapter workshop upstairs with bending brakes and jigsaws and all kinds of stuff. Boy, it'd really be nice to have that resource right around the corner of your house. So anyhow, good stop. He put us up, and off we went. This is flying across Nebraska, and there isn't a whole lot there. And I remember flying along with my son, and like I say, we're from Connecticut. We spent most of our time there. I said, Andy, this is part of the experience. Is there are places a lot different than where we come from. He said, yeah, I know what you're talking about. And you can still see a road and a building once in a while, but very different. So it's fun to get out there and see different parts of the country. You are going to hit a lot of bugs, bring a lot of bug cleaner. We really got pelted. So things are different. And nap when you can. We get up early sometimes, or we get bounced around in the heat and the thermals. And so if you don't feel ready to go and you got time, take a nap. So we did that occasionally too. So that's on our way out to Wyoming. We stayed right here in Wyoming. So the yellow part here is our trip, and this is where you have to start doing some planning and think about where you're flying and how you're going to accomplish the flight that you're going to undertake. So you'll see a jog here, right? And it was a climb all the way here. You're basically following the ground, and you have to get up to some fairly high altitude, make a jog across some mountains, and then come this way, and you get to the Teton Pass, because of course you got the mountain range here. The Teton Pass is fairly narrow, not too high. It's just south of Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And as soon as you get through this area, you're in the flatlands of Idaho, and it's relatively straightforward going up from there. So we looked at it, looked at the topography, and this is us heading up to the Teton Pass. And you have to realize things are pretty high. I come again from sea level, and we're flying, I don't think we're more than 2,000 feet above the ground. But I look at the altitude in my display here at 10,300 feet, and the temperature is 55. That's 12,400 foot density altitude. And so you really got to be careful of this, and you've probably heard it before, and I'm telling you, it's a real thing. I mean, I'm at 55% power. That's probably getting close to full power. I'm doing 121 knots true, and it's only showing 98, 99 indicated. So it really makes a difference out there. And also the other thing to watch out for is look at my headwinds. This is a 30-knot headwind with a 5-knot right crosswind. So really know the performance of your airplane. I'm pretty lucky in that I've got 260 horsepower in this thing. And so I'm not on the margin. But if you're flying something a little less, you've really got to know your climb rates, your takeoff and landing distances, and get very comfortable with flying the airplane slow and best angle climbs. So we made our way up to Calais, Idaho. So basically you come across those flatlands in the southern part of Idaho, and there's this really, I don't know if you call it a valley per se, but there's this wide area of I'll call it a valley with mountains on either side, and it just climbs up about a third of the way on your way to Johnson Creek. And the plan is to get there in the morning and see what the weather was like. And typically the mountains get bumpy in any kind of winds. And we said, okay, if the winds are up at all, we're going to not go. We're going to wait till the evening until the winds calm down and we can do the 30, 40-minute flight to Johnson Creek. Had a great plan. Came into Calais, got some fuel, not a breath of wind. It was just beautiful. You can see there's no clouds and there's nothing. I said, all right, let's try it. It was still bumpy. Not bad, but it was still bumpy. So there's a lot of thermal activity in the mountains themselves, a lot of heating and cooling, and then develop these currents actually just in the hills themselves. So be very respectful of the winds that may come to be. And flying in Johnson Creek, we'll talk about it, or any of the mountains there. Typically you fly in the morning or late afternoon, and there's a reason for it. Look at the elevation here, 5,000, a little over 5,000 feet. It was probably about 70 some odd degrees. So Johnson Creek, beautiful grass runway, very long, 3,400 feet. It is at 5,000 feet. And it is a valley. So you are coming around the tops of these hills, making a tight approach. And again, be very comfortable with flying slow, be very comfortable with hitting your spot on the landings. But once you get there, it's really quite the jewel of a place. So a picture of myself with my son, happy to be there. And everything was going according to the plan. So one thing I want you to notice in this picture is I do wear a survival vest. Survival gear is not what's in your airplane, it's what you have on your body. Camping gear is what's in the back of the airplane. And I have, first aid kit and fire starter stuff. I have the PLB on me, knife, a little bit of food, space blanket, stuff like that. And it's kind of like my security blanket. I feel good wearing it because, things happen. And so I just fly with that on. I have little reflective stripes. All it is a fishing vest that I converted. It has all these nice pockets and things on it. So Johnson Creek, if you hadn't been there, is actually pretty civilized camping. You've got showers and water. There's a pavilion, a very civilized outhouse. There's even a courtesy van to go down to just down the road about 10 minutes or so if you have to pick up some supplies at a very small little town. But so if you're going to fly into the Idaho area, this is probably the best base that you can come into. There is a road access to the place, and that's why they had to fly in there every year. So you get yourself there, get yourself set up, and it's time to think about flying. So like I said, I've only been out there twice, and I did my homework before I went out there, but unfortunately I only got to land at about 3 airports. So weather was just not very good back about 3 years ago, I guess it was. So did the same preparation. And like I said, you got to know your airplane. You got to respect the density altitude and know what it can do. You got to be comfortable flying slow. You're going to see a lot of unconventional approaches. Like I say, you want to fly in the morning or late afternoon. Always know when sunset is, and you got to plan your gas. So there's a quick hop over to McCall, which is probably, I don't know, 20, 30-minute flight. They have gas there. I think it's a 24-hour pump because there's no gas at any of the airports in the Johnson or in the mountain area. So plan that. And then read up on your destinations. You want to go fly at all these airports? Great. Well, what are they like? And they're all different. And so the best thing you can do is these Fly Idaho books. And they're terrific in that they have pictures of the airport. They have a rating system on the difficulty in terms of the approach, the runway, surface, if it's bumpy or not. And I think there's one other rating system. And they talk about it. They tell you all the information. So that is the thing to have. So that's the first part. The second part is, you talk to people. We'll talk about that in a second. Let people know where you're going. Is everybody there? And generally everybody flies out. Generally you can fly with other people. We didn't have anybody particular to go to, but people knew we were going to go out and come back. So it's not a flight plan, but if you don't come back, you tell people you're going to be back in the morning and you don't, well, then people are going to start asking questions. So just a good rule of thumb. Like I say, land on your spot. People talk about, I can fly really slow. I've got a really slow flying airplane, all this. If you float, 200 feet or so, that wipes out a lot of low airspeed capability you may have in an airplane. Land on your spot and pick your spot. We'll talk about that in some of the videos coming up here. And lighten your airplane as much as you can. So you probably heard this, but I've lived this. I learned about it, and feels good. So talk to the locals. This guy wasn't terribly helpful. He was there all the time, though. So in the evenings, people are around, and you read the book and say, this airport looks good, this strip looks good, but go talk to people. Have you landed here? What kind of plane were you in? What kind of tires did you have? What did you learn from it? And from there, we picked out a plan. We had two full days we wanted to plan. So we planned a southern route at a series of airports. The next day, we planned kind of a northern loop. And based on the information I picked up from people, there were some strips I didn't want to try, or certainly not try it the first day. And that ended up being pretty good advice and working out. So first morning, middle of June, there's frost on the wings. I mean, it was cold. Look at my son here. He's all bundled up. I mean, you had to wait till the sun came down off that hill to really get that plane to thaw out. It's just amazing, middle of June. But it can happen, so bring warm clothes. And like I say, it's good to be fully prepared in terms of a camping gear, food, and clothing. So pretty much you can put yourself up wherever you may end up. So our first stop, or actually was our second stop in the morning, was Deadwood Dam. We had looked at it. We were told it was relatively straightforward, not surrounded by a lot of hills. It was uphill, 7.6% grade. That doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're standing there, it looks like a lot. I don't know if you can see it. You're looking down on a reservoir, and you can see it's pretty good downhill. It's at 5,500 feet. It's only 1,800 feet. So again, you got to know what you're getting into. So we did one landing at a fairly simple strip on the way down to here, and just kind of warmed up. And then we hit Deadwood Dam. So I'm going to use this video as kind of an example of how to go about looking at an airport for the first time and making plans, some of the decisions we made, and how we went about it. So let me start here. So I'm going to be talking about this. So you will hear some, I apologize. So here's Deadwood Dam strip. You can see we're pretty high. This is our first circle around the airport. What we're looking for is how constrained it is. The biggest thing is what's the bailout procedure. So here we're low. And we looked over here. We said, I am not set up exactly where I want to be. I can just add power and go around. And that pretty much did it for us. So look how smooth the water is. Absolutely smooth, dead calm. So I didn't have to worry about turbulence in trees. So that was a good thing on the plus side. So here we are coming into the strip. And it's uphill. So if you can, land uphill. And you'll see why in a minute. Now look over here, you can see it's more worn out here than here. Quite often strips are not very usable at the very end. So we're looking to touch down right in this area right up here. You gotta get the nose way up. So even though we landed mid-strip, right about here, I had to add power to get up the hill. So that's what a high grade will do for you, is it'll slow you down really quick. So you have to add power and get up to the top of the dirt road. And just spin around and get a great view. So coming down this way, I'm going to add one more thing here. You can actually see the trees are fairly tall. Stay away from those. And one thing you got to be careful of on an upward sloping hill is don't crank the main gear. So watch the tail wheel. And I really pulled the nose way up so I could get the tail wheel down first. Because it's very easy to fly into a hill if it's got an upgrade. So you really want to kind of flare the thing and actually try to feel like you're trying to climb up a little bit.
Hey, Mark,
one more.
Pause that for just a sec.
Oh, sure. Stand by. Okay.
On the right side, on the far right from where you just paused, is a little speaker. If you turn that volume down, if you slide your mouse, where you click your mouse in, like in the middle of the screen there, wherever, and you'll see on the far right, there's a little speaker. If you'll turn that volume down just to where it's just
too loud.
Bit, yeah, it just you can't just probably about right there is probably about right. Let's try that.
Is that for both me and the audio?
No, that just the audio from we're just getting a lot of wind.
Oh, so I'm yelling over the airplane?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to turn down a little more. The noise isn't, this airplane sound isn't all that informative.
It's beautiful.
Okay, so right. Just tell me again if it's not working right. So let's see, get back to my train of thought here. So so that's the touchdown part, is you want to make, like I say, don't fly into the hill. Get that nose up if you're landing into the hill, but boy, you'll slow down nice.
That's much better.
Yeah, I can actually hear it in my headset better. And you can hear me okay?
Perfect.
All right, excellent. So one thing is, look at the trees on the left and right side here. Look how high up they come, even before you're even close to the ground. This will give you a vertigo effect, and it's surprisingly strong. You can't quite see it here, and you just got to stay focused on a runway. Stay focused on that runway and put it down where you want it. I've experienced this a couple times. All of a sudden, it feels like everything's rushing by you as you get down below the tree level. And a quick spinorama here. So we hopped out, felt proud of ourselves for having come in and had no problem. I'm going to pause it here real quick. So one of the things we did is go out and take a look at the runway. You've come in and you can only see so much from the air. So we stayed right on the ruts. And if one part of the runway is worn more than another, there's a reason for it. That's probably where people are landing. If it doesn't look like it's been used very much, there's probably a reason for it. So that's why we landed where we did. Now going down, we took a walk down about 100 feet or so and said, all right, how's it look? And we found a bunch of really kind of rough right here. We said, okay, when we come out, we're not going to go left, and we're going to come out and go a little slow. One of the other things you want to do is you will kick up rocks. You're on gravel here, and you don't want to apply a whole bunch of power really quick on gravel, because you tend to stir it up and it can come up again in the prop. So you typically do a slow application, maybe hold it, get yourself rolling so the prop wash goes back, and then apply the power. And so that's what we did here. So you're going to see it's going to roll out, and I'll get going here. And if you can hear the sound, you can hear the two applications of power. So we tried to avoid the rocks on the left. Not it was big, it was just a little rougher than we wanted. Got lined up, made sure we were good. Power comes on. And like I say, I love the shadow in this video. Look how quickly it drops away. And it's a beautiful reservoir. Just one quick view looking out the nose, and we'll move on. So again, you're looking downhill and you're looking up on a tail drag, you can't see much. So if you can get the tail up, that helps. And you accelerate very quickly going downhill. And we're off and running. So one thing I want to show you is, so we've talked a little bit about gravel runways, we talked about uphill slopes. How do you actually account for that in terms of runway distance? Well, there's this thing here, and this is called what's it called? The Takeoff Performance Computer. It's a slide rule. And this is a nifty little device. I've had this for a while. Being an engineer and a gadget guy, I had to buy one. But it's really cool because it has a bunch of these sliders, and I'm not going to go through exactly how to do it. But basically, you put in, you have all these sliders, one's for runway slope, wind, gross weight, percent of maximum, and you get a takeoff distance. And so basically, you can move these things back and forth, and you can find out what percent increase or decrease you'll get in your takeoff roll, or takeoff roll for your aircraft. And it's pretty interesting because it's non-linear. Uphill won't take away more takeoff roll than the downhill will give you. So I'm pretty sure you can find this. You also put in pressure, altitude, and temperature, so you get density, altitude as well. So a nifty little device, and it's fun just to play with and get in your head some idea of what these percentage changes would be. So I just want to talk some more about some of the places we went. So that basic process I talked about is, flying around the field, looking down, looking at the runway, picking your spot while you're still circling over the runway, and knowing what your bailout procedure is. We'll talk about that one more video coming up. It all makes you feel good. If you make all these decisions early, before you start initiate, a downwind, you feel much better. You're committing to the approach, and you've got a backup plan, and it can calm your nerves. So that process worked pretty well for us. And I had my son, and he's really good. He's looking for things, and he's checking on things. So having a competent co-pilot's a wonderful thing. Anyhow, Reed Ranch, pretty close to Ryan Field, 4,100 feet, 2,200 feet long. Kind of a cool approach coming around this hill and coming in. Very grassy, so very different than the other airport. And what's neat is you land here, and as you're taxiing, all these gophers are going left and right. Gophers everywhere. They're running all over. But you got to be careful. Where there are gophers, there are gopher holes. And a gopher hole can swallow up your tail wheel if you hit it just wrong. So you got to be a little careful about these places. I have 8.5 by 6 tires, which are good for, everything's pretty hard out there. There's no need for big tires. Pretty much if it's a runway of airplanes can land at, those kind of tires are fine. If you're going off airport, that's when you need the big tires because you really don't know what you're getting into. And I'm sticking with places that planes have flown. Indian Creek, another pretty, everything's pretty. A much longer strip. It's right next to a river. I think a long time ago, they flew DC-3s into here with big rafts, and they had rafting trips going out. 4,600 feet, quite long. But again, 4,700 foot density altitude in the 70s. So your density altitude is definitely over 5,000 feet. So, and then Upper Loon, one of my favorites. I love coming into this airport. You actually come around this hill. You get below the top of this, whatever you call it, hill there, mountain's a big rock, and you come around below the top. You come through this cut and make a little jog and come down the runway. And then you typically go out the other way. So a lot of these airports are one way in, one way out. When the winds are calm, not a big deal. Another reason for going in calm winds, not so much for keeping good control, but just you have your choice of which way you want to land. So put everything you can in your favor. You can see here it's not very wide, and this is true of all the strips. So not only do you have to hit your spot in terms of length, you got to hit your spot laterally. because it's pretty much one landing gear wide, plus or minus maybe 3-4 feet either side. And so you got to be really good at tracking. So flying off a pavement, you can get kind of lazy. If you got a 75-foot runway, 100-foot runway, we kind of add the power, we go, and we may wander a little bit. Well, if you want to go out and do this and you're a little uncomfortable, line up on that center line. If you want to, put your left wheel on the center line and track that center line with that rudder. Get that, and you have to be able to track it with the tail a little bit low, because you want to get off the ground generally as soon as it's comfortable, because sometimes they're a little bumpy. Practice that, use that as your alignment method, and you'll be surprised how much better you're going to get if you go practice that. And then Wilson Bar, not as high, but only 1,500 feet long. And there's almost a 3% grade coming uphill in this direction. This is really a spectacular place. And this, I would say, was probably the most, I'll say it was most difficult in terms you had to planning it and making sure you did the turn. It's a turning final, and I'll show you some video here. It's kind of fun. So let's see here. So I'm going to run this video and I'm going to stop it and show you a couple things as we go. Again, and part of this is the process of going through reconnoitering, or whatever the word is, surveying what the area is. And if you can, see what other people are doing and see how it's working out for them. So again, more video. Steve?
Hello, we had a technical difficulty there.
Okay.
I think you froze up, then everybody dumped off, and I think we're back going though.
I see 26 participants.
That's about what we had in here before.
Okay. All right. So nobody's left yet.
We got 40 on YouTube, 26.
All right. Okay. So let's see. So anyhow, this is a video of us coming into Wilson Bar.
So you're going to have to share your screen again too.
Oh, I got to do the share thing. All right. Yep. We lost the share. Okay. Stand by.
I blame the internet.
Okay. Presentation, and I click the share sound. Share. Okay. Do you see a video of the airplane looking down on a river?
Do your swap and then you'll be good to go.
The swap thing, really? What do you see?
Give it a second to catch up. Did you click that swap? Or
I did. What do you see?
Right now, I still see your presenter mode, but it might be just taking it a second to catch up.
Well, so if I do this, I should be in just pure slide mode for you now.
Right now, you're still in presenter mode.
Really? Let me go the other way. Maybe I clicked the other screen. Okay, what do you see now?
Same thing, actually.
I don't know how I can be. I'm switching back and forth between monitors.
Did you share the screen or did you share the application?
I shared the application.
Huh. Interesting.
Maybe, and I'm in presentation mode.
So if you switch to non-presentation mode, that will fix it for now anyway.
What do you see now?
Still the same.
Do you see a video running?
No.
No. Okay, let's find out what's going on here.
Thanks for your patience, folks.
Yeah. Let's see what I'm going to do here.
You might do an unshare and a reshare.
That's what I'm thinking about doing here. So I'm trying to remember how to do that.
Up at the top is the unshare.
There it is. So stop share. All right, here. Okay, I got this figured out. do a swap.
Now hang on, because you stopped share, but I'm still showing your screen shared. I'm going to knock there you go. Now it's gone.
Okay, I just clicked leave share. All right, so I'm going to do share screen all over again.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's see. I have multiple PowerPoints up. How did that happen?
I don't know. I'm not there.
Okay. All right. What do you see?
Now I see exactly what we need to see.
Good. All right. This looks right. Okay. Let's see. Start over. Okay. Here we are. Wilson Bar. Airport's down here. We're at high altitude survey. We see there's a big hill here and a big hill here, and you only one way in, one way out. And you see an airplane right here. You can see my cursor, Steve?
Yep.
Good. So there's an airplane that just came down the river and he was landing right here, and we saw 3 other airplanes. So the good news is people have landed there. So probably not too bad as long as the plane's not flipped over or anything. And we got to see the path he took, and boy, he looked low. But we had read up on it, and the winds were calm and the weather was nice. We said, well, let's give it a go. So this is us checking it out. Watch him do his thing.
You might turn that volume down a little bit again, too. There we go.
There we go. For some reason, it comes on full. So we did another circular pass, and then we headed down river, or upriver. And you see this big hill here. So we decided to get the best long path to get our altitude down. We decided to go around that hill and start coming down the river. And this will speed up a little bit just to kind of, and you're down to snake your way down. And boy, this is fun. And you keep yourself slow. Don't pick up any speed. And what you're going to see, I'm going to stop it right here, is you got to come around the corner here. And we had the same thing, is you have to make a turn down the river. And as you turn, you're going to be looking down the river. And you have to see the runway off to your right in exactly the right position for a good low approach. If the runway's not where it's supposed to be, you don't have any time to correct. So we talked about it. We said we're going to roll out down the river, and if the runway's not where it's supposed to be, we're going to go straight and climb out and try it again. So that's the procedure you set up for yourself. You know exactly what you're going to do. You don't have to think about it. You have go or no go. So we're going to start this up. So we're probably only 100 feet off the water here. So look just to the right here is the runway, right where I want it. And it was a very gentle turn. If it was too high or too low, I would have gone straight. And you can see there's a little white L-shaped end markers. And again, most of the touchdown, you could see it was out here by the flag, and that's where we touched down. And I bounced this one a little bit, but that's okay. Again, not very wide. And the judging crew was over here. So another view looking out the wingtip. And so we had looked down on top of it. We kind of knew at what point around the bend we'd have to start looking for the runway. My sense said, look for the rafters. And there are the rafters. I said, okay, at the rafters, that's where we're making a turn. It's going to be just after that. Now, one thing I want you to watch is watch the shadow when it gets right to here. You'll see there's like a 50-foot jump up in the elevation of the ground. Right there, boom. See that shadow come up? So we actually radioed down. So there's a common frequency for the backcountry flying. I think it's 122.9, and that's like the party line. And it's great because people tell you where they are and what they're doing. And we called down, and the guy said, "Yeah, come on in. Just watch out for the lip at the end of the runway, and don't get too low," which was good advice. So there's my bounce. It was a 3-point bounce. So. And again, being uphill, you slow down pretty quick. So I think this will do it. What's next? So I'm going to continue on here. So this is what it looks like when we got there, and look at the size of this hill on the other side. Really spectacular. I took a walk back and took some pictures. And Andy said, "Oh, I got to get my camera gear out." So he pulled his I don't know how many pounds of gear out, and he's got his fancy tripod. He's got his heavy duty camera. He's got a water bottle and everything else he carries. And he went walking down to the end of the runway, and got a bunch of us taking off going out. So we got the 3 planes going out. So I'm going to quickly go back to that video and just show you one of those. So you got to go out the way you came, and you're going to be flying reverse valley right up here. Again, pretty narrow. But one of the neat things about this trip is you go uphill at the very end. There we go. You go up, and the same thing. You take a look. There's a little bit of a rough spot. Partial application of power. Get yourself established. Full power. Avoid this rough spot. Keep it straight. And you're on your way. So I'm going to go fast forward a little bit here. I want to show you one more thing. So there's no way you're out climbing these hills. So you just say, I'm coming around. And you got to keep your eye open. There could be somebody coming down the other way landing and not on the radio. So you got to keep your eyes open. Didn't happen to us. So one thing I want to just show here is the technique I like to use is I like to get my tail wheel up. And my goal is to get the wheel just like 6 inches off the ground. One, it protects the tail wheel from any bad bumps or gopher holes or anything. You give up very little in takeoff performance. It gives you a little bit better visibility, but it still gets you off the ground pretty quick. So I tried to do that here. It worked out pretty well. So I'll put a little forward stick. See, the tail wheel comes up, and I'm trying to hold it right about there. And then the plane comes up, and you're flying. So. Yeah, it's a pretty fun turning around. So that's kind of the 2 videos I wanted to show about going about operations on grass strips, backcountry strips, in terms of the constraints you have, one way in, one way out, being narrow, hitting your spot, thinking about terrain roughness and so forth. This is all stuff you can practice wherever you are. And the better you get at it, the better you'll feel when you're out doing it. It's not that hard. You don't have, I'm flying a plane that's got pretty good performance, but any tail dragger with ample power should be able to handle these strips as long as you're proficient. So moving on, we again talked to people, talked to the locals, and Andy really wanted to do some photo shoot. And I don't know if you noticed, but I have 2 large back doors on the airplane. They can come off. So the back right side of the airplane is completely open. We have a backward facing seat. He has a strap system. I strap him in, and he can take air-to-air videos. And this Carbon Cub pilot said, yeah, I'll go out with you. Let's do some air-to-air stuff. And so we had a great time doing that. This is just one of the pictures that we got from the trip. And Andy put together some video. We went down to a couple strips and did some video stuff. And so we had fun doing that. So that's pretty much Johnson Creek. Like I said, we did a southern loop and hit a number of airports there and one day. And then we did kind of the northern loop. Wilson Bar was up here and did that another day. And we were just blessed with some really good weather. So our typical thing was we get up right around dawn, have some breakfast, take off as pretty much as the sun was just about hitting the valley, come back around 11 o'clock or so, have lunch, take a nap as we were tired. And then in the afternoon, we would do various things or go out, do a little more flying or go get some gas or something like that. So anyhow, so you can fly out of Johnson Creek. And in Montana, there's this long valley that runs right here. And it's kind of neat because it's a nice valley. It's actually towns and roads and stuff like that. It ends right at this little point here in Montana. So you're only flying about this much of the mountainous region. And one thing I will tell you is, GPS is wonderful, but even with it, it's easy to get turned around. And a couple of times I started heading up the wrong valley, even with the GPS, because you don't have a real good sense of distance. But anyhow, so it worked out great, and we flew ourselves up to Ryan Field, which is right next to Glacier National Park. And we went there because there's Ryan Field. So this should be on your place to go list if you're out that way. It's the home field for the Recreational Aviation Foundation, which is a really good organization dedicated to preserving backcountry strips. And they do it both through working on strips, but they do a lot of stuff in the legal sense. They talk to local municipalities and whatnot about recreational use statutes and getting aviation included in that. They work with the Forest Service on certain strips, and they go out there and maintain them. They have fly-ins and work parties, and they're all over the country. They came to a grass strip here in Connecticut last year and put up a couple, a fire ring and some camping stands. So we said, yeah, let's go there. That looks like a fun place. So we're there and really pretty. It's right up against Glacier National Park. This is looking, I think it's northwest. The preferred way to land is coming in this way. 3,700 feet, 2,500 feet, not terribly challenging and fairly wide. So this is not as challenging a strip area as the Johnson Creek area. There's a picture looking the other direction, but a lot of strips are not flat. And so this runway has a downhill slope to it. And then it has kind of a swale and then kind of a sort of steep last part that goes uphill. And they prefer you to land on this part because even though it's a little bit land or roll, it's a much more predictable flare and landing. They find that when people tend to come in this direction, they get kind of spooked by this hill. There's a big drop off on the other side, and they tend to land long, and then they're landing into the hill, and they've just had some problems. So there's a whole, again, do your homework. And you actually have to get to the RAF website. They say, if you're going to land at Ryan Field, please read this. You actually have to sign it or put your email there that you read it. And we're glad we did. And they have Montana has all these little white cones. They're not little, they're big, like 3 feet in diameter. And they're really nice because they marked the runway. So works out pretty well. We had a primo camping spot right next to a pavilion with picnic tables, and there was a shower in the back, propane heated water. So really nice. So we didn't know what we were going to do there. We just showed up. And it turns out they were having a work party. And the RAF has built this barn. It's a post and beam barn. It's really kind of a building to house the mowers and some other equipment they use to maintain the field. We said, sure, we like to build things. So they were doing a lot of interior work. And so they put us to work. And we had a great time talking to people and working on the interior. We became the metal wainscoting experts. Here's Andrew working away, and they had this metal wainscoting. You can see it behind him, and it really protects the walls from things banging into it. So that's what we did all day, and it was fun. It was a good day. Pretty picture. Just one of those things, again, hopefully gets your juices going and go out and experience this kind of thing, is that's the moon coming up in the early evening. And so this is looking east. So the sun is in the west, and it just lights up this hill. And we went for an evening flight over Glacier Park, nice and slow, low prop RPM. Didn't want to make a lot of noise, but it's legal. It's okay. And we actually flew right up against that hill in the bright sunlight. It was really something. So took a day off, took a hike to Glacier National Park, hiked 9 miles. It felt like 19, but it was a fun hike. And this is the tourist spot, the pretty picture that everybody takes, and you can kind of see why. And you are in Montana. So beware of bears. There are bear boxes there. We didn't see any, and there weren't many reports. But again, you're out, camping in the middle of the woods and stuff. Even though there are buildings and cars and stuff around, the bears, make their way. So we did have some bear spray with us. So I want to talk a little bit about the flying in that area. So it's different. It's just a different topography. It's similar in some respects in terms of the vegetation, but everything's less tall. Not as high density altitude, both pressure altitude and temperature. And the strips tend to be a little longer and wider. So if you wanted to kind of get your feet wet and not try Idaho first, you might want to go to Montana in this area. There are 4 good strips. One was Schaefer Meadows. And again, pretty wide. You got the cones long enough. And you'll see a lot of stuff here. Well, that stuff is for these guys. There's a rafting operation, and they fly the rafters in. You can only get to this spot by airplane. And somehow they pack in all this stuff in these airplanes, and they fly them in, and I think they go for about a week. I don't know where they pull out, but this is where they push in, and they got to walk about a half mile with all this stuff. But here's how they get it there. This is out of Kalispell City, Montana, which is about 10-minute flight south of Ryan Field. And these things are just packed. They haven't even filled this one yet. You can see stuff is going up to the ceiling here. This is an observation door when they do scenic flights. And they pack this thing full of stuff and maybe one passenger, and they make multiple trips, bring them into that grass strip. So another good place to go to is Meadow Creek, 4,000 foot, 2,800 feet. So again, not challenging, still quite pretty. Nice hard grass, fairly smooth, pretty wide. So not super challenging as far as the strip itself goes. But one of the interesting things about this strip is where you come in. Look at the size of that granite wall. I don't know how many hundreds of feet it is, but boy, it sure looked big. And we actually came in over that hill, and we're looking for the strip, and it was kind of hiding under our nose because we didn't realize kind of how close it really was to the mountain. So this is some of the things you experience when you're flying out there, is that, you know, distances and height differences. It's all very different, certainly from where I come from. And so we, you know, looked down and we said, okay, we're gonna have to make a circling descent to get down to altitude. And we had to gauge where to turn the base leg. And again, look at the cliff. This is the approach end of the runway. They have two markers that mark the end of the threshold of the runway, or the end of the runway. Windsock. And that's what, maybe 100 feet. And then it's probably 300 feet down on a diagonal right here. And then, so you got to make your way around and make a turn, and then come in and just do your standard pattern. But it's always something different. So take your time. So we hit a couple other places, similar kind of thing. But it's like I said, the Recreational Aviation Foundation. I don't know if anybody can figure out what this is a picture of by any chance. Take a guess if you want. This is actually a steel fire ring around a fire. This is actually a fire in here, and some artist with a cutting torch cut out all the trees and the airplane and stuff, and you can look through and see the fire, and it makes this great picture. So, so that's the Glacier National Park Ryan Field area, and so you can see kind of so we made a trip. This was that trip where we hit 4 strips, and then we got fuel in Kalispell, which is right here, which is kind of a recreational area. And then Ryan Field is, Ryan Field is right about here. So the yellow part is the third leg of the adventure part of our journey, I guess you'd say, or getting to our third place. So I don't have any pictures here, but you can fly directly from here to here, but that's not as much fun as flying the valley up to here. And it happens to be a road that follows the valley up in here, down in here. You can just barely see the road here. And it comes up to East Glacier National Park. And that was really fun. And it was pretty safe because you're right over a road the entire way. So we were, you know, no more than a couple thousand feet up, probably like 1,500 feet up. So nice little jaunt here. And then it gets real flat. And now you're in Montana. And we just made our way all the way down to Winifred. It's just the Missouri Breaks area. So Winifred, Montana, 3,300 feet. Nice long runway with a very gradual upslope at the second half of the runway. Super wide, and people park their planes on either side. And you know, it's just our second time here. And Ralph, who is walking here, is kind of the caretaker of the airport, and he puts on this fly-in every year. I don't know how long he's been doing it. Super nice guy, and he arranges for the locals to come in and cater, you know, kind of a barbecue. And we had 2 fantastic meals with you know, grilled stuff and pie and salads and all kinds of stuff. So it's just a real good low-key fun event. Got a pretty good size hangar. Some people put their planes in. People actually have their tents inside. In some cases, we decided to be outside. But one thing about Montana is it gets windy. That's our tent getting blown in pretty good. You pay to have, you know, this tent obviously cost more. It was a better tent. It's not near as collapsed. But again, the winds can get howling out there because it's flat. So we actually didn't fly one day just because it was just too much. We ended up going up in the evening when the wind subsided, and that's some of the sunset pictures you saw in the opening video. So plan accordingly and stay flexible. So we walked downtown, learned a lot about Winifred. But it's definitely the big sky state. So again, being from the East Coast, we don't see things like this. And so it's funny, as I've been in Montana several times. The first time I was there, I said, yeah, I got it. I know why they do this. And this is what you see. Just these spectacular clouds over these fields with the shadows. In the evening, things light up. I mean, here's a sunset looking out. You can just see the ground just turns to gold for a little while there right at sunset. So really pretty place, and sunset coming down over the side. So anyhow, that's worth the trip. So they did have a fly out. Again, it's a whole bunch of group of people there, all looking for places to go. So there's an EAA chapter in Lewistown, and they had a fly in with a pancake breakfast. Well, of course, let's go. But I don't know, 40 minutes south, something like that. And they actually had the Montana Air National Guard there. And so you got to look at a C-130. Well, it turned out the guy on the right here was flying, I believe it was a Super Cub or a Carbon Cub, and he's one of the pilots for the Montana Air Guard. And he
He's
said,
a Husky. He's flying a Husky.
Husky, okay, sorry, one of those tandem tail draggers. And he was part of the guards. He said, come on up, let's get in the cockpit. And he was letting other people come up too. My son here is on the left. And, you know, this is just part of the adventure of flying around and going places. We had no idea we'd get an opportunity to do this. And I've got all kinds of stories about adventures when I flew to Alaska, and I'm not going to bore you with all of them, but they're all, they all make the trip worthwhile. But I am going to tell you one story about this guy, and it makes you gain a lot of respect for people when you learn something about him. So he's been flying C-130s. This is not fancy technology. This is steam gauge for the most part, right? Mechanical HSI, attitude indicator. And he said he flew over, I think it was Syria. And they were doing operations in Syria how many years prior. And he said they were flying at night under NVGs and off airport operations. And I go, that sounds exciting. And I said, how do you do that? He says, send out a special operations team, and they have 5 infrared or 5 markers you can only see with night vision goggles. They put 2 left and right at the threshold of the runway. They put 2 more left and right 500 feet down from that. And they put 1 more at the end of the usable runway. So there are only 5 points of light that you see, and you have to land within that box, that 500-foot long, however foot wide box under NVGs, and all you see are those 4 lights and the light at the end, and that's it. You're coming in dark. And boy, that sounds pretty exciting. And that's the kind of flying these guys do in these kinds of airplanes. So.
His wife also flies a C-130 and also flies the Husky.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Scott and Missy are they're Montana fixtures.
Okay, great. Yeah, first time I met him, nice guy. So what's different about this picture? Take a look. This is Ralph's little, I guess it's a pickup truck. I don't know what it's called. It's a Suzuki something or other. And if you look carefully, this picture is not reversed. He's sitting on the right-hand side. And it's standard. So the challenge is can you hop in the right side of a vehicle, drive it on the right side of the road, and shift with your left hand using the proper feet. And so that was great fun. So we took turns doing that, and Ralph would just let you hop on that thing and take it, all of an 1/8 of a mile downtown. But again, one of those little adventures you get when you're going out flying and meeting interesting people and seeing interesting places. So flying around the Missouri Breaks area is, again, very pretty, different. So it's Montana, but it's not the mountainous Montana. It's a flatter, plateau-y, kind of hilly area. And this is probably a good picture of kind of the topography you see. Lower altitude, 2,300 feet. This is Heller Bottom, which is right along a river. Little narrower, again, very hard grass, no need for big balloony tires. If you have just, like I say, 8.5 by 6, you're going to be fine. Here's a picture. This is one of the pictures I like. Great lighting. There's a nice hill to the left side, but it's probably a good 300-400 yards away from the runway, so it's really not a factor. So a pretty place to walk around. Then we went to the place called Cow Creek. Again, very different. Look how much grass there is. Here, you have to look carefully where the runway is. And you have to think about, where the real edge of the runway is. Look for the grass that's been matted down, where have people been touching down. There is a windsock, so it's an airport. It's on the map. 3,300 feet, 2,200 feet long. Everything's fine as long as you, again, stay in the center line. A little bumpier, but not bad. And then if the conditions are good and it's not too bumpy, you can fly the Missouri River. And it was nice and calm, and we didn't see a lot of people out there, and we said, let's give it a shot. We tried one or two other strips on the way out, and this was great fun. And I was, a little concerned about flying low. And so we started higher, but the more we flew down the river, the more I realized there were a lot of places, should there be an engine failure, there were a lot of places you could go. So you can see, like right here in this island, not that that's the greatest spot, it's flat. And there are other flat areas. You can see a flat area up on the right here. So I'd say at least 50% of the time, if they're having an engine failure at low altitude, there's a place you could go and certainly survive, and probably a decent chance of not banging up the airplane. It's just the nature of the topography. So we had a lot of fun flying for about, I would say about 20 minutes or 40 miles just down the river. And so that's the kind of stuff you can do. I think that covers most of the types of flying we did, some of the thought process we did. I'm going to wrap up here with just talking about, getting home a little bit. So eventually you got to make your way back. It's about 2.5 days for us. I cruise about 125 knots true, but it's still a long way. So a good place to go coming out of there is Spearfish, South Dakota. There's a nice airport there. There's a town not too far away. And you, again, just as an aside, see the big doors here? Those doors come off. And Andy, my son, sits here and he can take video out the back. One of the benefits, you can do this in malls, one of the benefits of the Bearhawk. So, and we worked our way dodging some rainstorms. So that's a whole different type of flying. Great to have onboard weather radar on your iPad or tablet, and be cognizant of delays and storms. Don't use it tactically, use it more strategically. And I'm always amazed at the storms you get in the Midwest. This is a pretty mean sky. It was even meaner looking when we were there. And we landed after a rainstorm. It was fairly clear. And by the time we tied down and did some things, this storm rolled in. Fortunately, there were no hail. God, thank God. And the rain wasn't too terrible. So pick your stops. And one more trip for all you Super Cub.
Are you still there?
Oh, there we go. My back, Steve?
You're there. And
yeah, okay. My headset turns off if there's no audio coming in after, I think, 30 minutes or something like that. So anyhow, and just one quick stop for all you Piper Cub fans is the Piper Aviation Museum in Lock Haven. Yeah, nice little museum. And it was on the way. It was a nice day, so we stopped off. So you can put that on your list. Nice people there. So I'm going to wrap it up here, and I'm going to do questions and answers. But get out there and do it, right? So I've had this plane for about 4 or 5 years, and like I said, did my homework and read up on things, talked to people. A lot of what I've relayed to you was relayed to me by other people. And if you follow the advice and use common sense and take it slow and work your way up, you can go out there. I think Idaho's the toughest flying I've done. I've flown in Alaska. Not the really crazy stuff, but I have flown, up into Fairbanks and down through Talkeetna and Soldotna and the Kenai Peninsula. And that's not near as difficult as flying Idaho. I would recommend, start in Winifred, go the other way, then Montana, and then to go to the Glacier Ryan Field, Glacier National Park area, and work your way down if you kind of want to work your way up, going out west. So there are lots of friendly grass strips out there. You don't have to have a big fat tire, super slow flying, Carbon Cub to do this sort of stuff. I mean, they're wonderful airplanes. They'll get you in and out of anywhere, but you can still go to many beautiful places at many grass strips with a good performing tailwheel plane. Now, I think most of the planes I saw out there were tailwheel. You could probably get away with a larger tired Cessna 172 with 180 horsepower, but basically it has to have decent short field performance and enough power to handle the density altitude, and you'll be okay with it. If you want to learn about flying out there in these strips, join the RAF. They have a great website, resources about flying on all kinds of backcountry strips. Again, the Fly Idaho book. There's also one on flying Utah. So next year, which is this year, I want to make my way out to Arkansas and the Southwest, trying to get that planned out for July or August or maybe September, once I get things figured out around here. And Andy wants to go and bring his cameras.
We're waiting for you here in Arkansas.
I know. I want to get there. So.
Hey, I'm gonna. Why don't you unshare your screen, and then we got a couple of questions, and a couple of things. We'll.
All right. So I'll stop share.
There we go. Let's do that, and I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna also do.
How'd I do on time?
You're doing good, and I've got a. Let me do this here also. There we go. So a couple things. The Spearfish, the guy in Spearfish, Ray Gillick, Eagle Aviation, used to put an event on prior to these two fly-ins, prior to Johnson Creek and the Breaks fly-in, for a stop, kind of a little stopover there that we used to do. So he's always happy to meet with you if you're going through that area. Ray's a great guy. I got to make a little correction for you, and there's some people that are going to jump on you. I'm surprised. Lewiston is in Idaho. Lewistown is in Montana.
Did I put Lewistown in my?
Every time I go to the breaks, I say Lewiston, and they all go Lewistown.
Okay.
so it's my chance to correct somebody on it. And the little Suzuki thing you were driving is called a Carry, but when you look at it, it's got a Suzuki logo on Carry, so we call it the Scary. So that's kind of what it's affectionately known as.
Yeah,
a couple things too. I liked your slide rule thing that you were showing. That's really cool. And if you're like an engineer, that's pretty handy thing to have. There's Sparky Imeson's book, the Mountain Flying Bible, is actually a pretty good book too. And the thing that I like about it is it has a bunch of really simple rules of thumb that help with some of that. And it's quite startling when you look at this uphill and downhill thing. So don't ever think, if there's too much wind that you're not comfortable landing uphill and taking off downhill, then don't land there, because really the terrain just trumps everything else. So I mean, it's just a real important thing to remember there. But if you can't do the one way, and if it's too windy for one way in, one way out, then don't do it. But, great presentation, great pictures, Mark. I don't know if anybody else has any questions. I don't see anything popping up here at all. You were so thorough that nobody has any questions, probably is what it is. But we'll give somebody another minute. But it was very nice. The video is really great, and just kind of covered it off all really well. So thank you so much for doing that this evening.
Happy to do it. It's fun to talk about because I get to relive it. It makes me want to go do it again.
Laura wants to know where the ice cream pictures are.
Ice cream pictures?
Yeah, were you not there for the ice cream making in Winifred?
Yeah, we were there. Yeah, I can't include everything. No, Andy had some sort of a bet or something on that. Yeah.
Well, again, Mark, thank you so much. And you're heading. We look forward to your presentation on flying in Arkansas when you get down here finally.
Okay.
And it's been all it's been doing here, so you really haven't missed anything. It rained all day today, and it's supposed to rain again tomorrow. So when that stops, though, it's going to be really nice around here. So.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping to head out to Utah after visiting you. So one of the guys I met at Ryan Field, his name's Brian Bell. He's just retired as a captain on a boat, and he lives in the Utah area. So I'm gonna go out and visit him, and visit a bunch of strips out there. So I get see what that area is like. So again, when you go out to these fly-ins, you meet all kinds of people, and you make friendships and places to go.
You use Galen Hanselman's book. He's got a great book on Utah as well too.
Right.
So, well, thank you so much for your time, Mark. We sure appreciate it, and thanks for being here, everybody. We will see you next time. Stay tuned.